At 2 a.m. last Tuesday, someone knocked on my door. When I looked through the peephole, my heart stopped. Standing there, in a rain-soaked jacket, was my sister Lizzie. The same sister whose funeral I attended exactly 1 year ago. The same sister I buried. The same sister whose death certificate I have framed in my living room because I couldn't let go. She was alive. And she was about to tell me the most horrifying truth about our family that would make me question everything I thought I knew about the people who raised us. Before I continue, if you've ever felt betrayed by the people who were supposed to protect you, if you've ever questioned whether your family really had your back, hit that subscribe button. This story is going to take you on a journey that will make you grateful for every genuine person in your life. And if you stay until the end, you'll understand why sometimes the greatest act of love is walking away. My name is Moira Lance. I'm 28 years old, and I live in Las Vegas, Nevada. Not the glamorous strip part, the real Las Vegas, where normal people live normal lives, or at least try to. I work as a nurse at Sunrise Hospital, pulling double shifts most weeks because keeping busy was the only thing that stopped me from drowning in grief. A year ago, my world shattered. My younger sister, Elizabeth, Lizzie to everyone who loved her, died in what the police called a tragic accident. She was 25, vibrant, brilliant, with her whole life ahead of her. The official report said she lost control of her car on a mountain road outside Boulder City. The car went over the edge. They found it 3 days later, burned beyond recognition. The body inside was identified through dental records. I remember every second of that funeral. Our mother, Janet Lance, dressed in black, sobbing into our father Walter's shoulder. Our older brothers, Michael and Jeffrey, standing stone-faced, the way men in our family were taught to grieve, silently, stoically. Our extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins, all gathered at Desert Memorial Gardens, watching as they lowered an empty casket into the ground because there wasn't enough left to bury. I spoke at her funeral. I talked about how Lizzie was the light of our family, how she had just finished her MBA, how she was about to start her dream job at a consulting firm in Los Angeles. I talked about her laugh, her ambition, her fierce independence that our parents always said would get her in trouble someday. I never imagined how right they were. Just not in the way any of us thought. For a year, I carried that grief like a second skin. I went to therapy. I joined a support group. I celebrated what would have been her 26th birthday by releasing lanterns at Lake Mead, watching them float into the night sky like little souls finding their way home. I talked to her grave every Sunday, telling her about my week, about the patients I'd saved, about the life she was missing. And then, at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday, she knocked on my door. I almost didn't open it. Who comes knocking at 2 a.m. with good news? But something made me look through the peephole, and that's when I saw her. My brain couldn't process it. It was like seeing a ghost, except ghosts don't look soaking wet from the rain. Ghosts don't have that specific nervous energy, that way of shifting weight from foot to foot that was uniquely Lizzie. My hands shook so badly I could barely unlock the deadbolt. When I finally got the door open, we just stared at each other. She looked different, thinner, her hair cut short and dyed dark brown instead of her natural blonde, glasses she never needed before. But her eyes. Those were Lizzie's eyes, that specific shade of green that we inherited from our grandmother. "Moira," she said, and her voice cracked. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I should have screamed. I should have called the police. I should have done 1,000 things other than what I did. But instead, I pulled her inside and held her while she sobbed against my shoulder, this ghost of my sister, this impossible thing that couldn't be real but was. We stood there for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. When she finally pulled away, I saw that she was trembling, her eyes darting to my windows like she expected someone to be watching. "Are you alone?" she asked. "Yes." "Lizzie, what the hell is going on?" "You're dead. I went to your funeral. My voice broke. I mourned you. For a year, I mourned you. I know. And I'm sorry. God, Moira, I'm so sorry. But I had to disappear. I had to make everyone think I was dead because, she stopped, her face crumbling. Because Mom and Dad were trying to kill me. The words hung in the air like smoke. I felt my knees go weak. What? We need to sit down, she said. This is going to take a while. We sat at my kitchen table, the same table where Lizzie and I had shared countless meals growing up, where we'd done homework together, where we'd planned our futures. I made coffee with shaking hands, barely able to process the impossibility of making coffee for my dead sister. Start from the beginning, I said, my voice barely a whisper. Lizzie wrapped her hands around the mug, staring into it like she could find the right words there. Do you remember Paulson Investments? I nodded. Paulson Investments was our father's company, the source of the Lance family wealth. Walter Lance had built it from nothing 40 years ago, turning it into one of the most successful investment firms in Nevada. It was his pride and joy, his legacy. He always said it would pass to his children one day. About 2 years ago, Lizzie continued, I started noticing things. Dad would have these meetings at the house, always late at night, always with the same people. Douglas Milton, Wyatt Epson, Cole Tate, Bill Miller, you remember them, Dad's old business partners. They'd go into his study, and the energy would always be weird. Tense. So I got curious. You know me, I've always been nosy. A ghost of a smile crossed her face, then vanished. One night, I snuck downstairs and listened at the door. Moira, they were talking about fraud. Massive, years-long fraud. Dad's been embezzling money from clients' accounts, cooking the books, creating false portfolios. We're talking tens of millions of dollars. My blood ran cold. That's impossible. Dad would never. I thought the same thing. So I started digging. I used my MBA skills, got access to the company records through Alexander. You remember Alexander Lindsay, Dad's assistant? He had a crush on me, so I used that. She looked ashamed. I got into the files, Moira. And it was all true. Worse than I imagined. Dad wasn't just embezzling. He was running a Ponzi scheme. Using new investors' money to pay returns to old investors. The whole company was a house of cards, and it was about to collapse. I felt sick. Why didn't you go to the police? I tried. I was going to. But first, I confronted Dad. I thought maybe there was an explanation, maybe I was reading it wrong. So one night, I went to him and Mom, laid it all out. Showed them the evidence I'd compiled. Her hands started shaking so badly coffee sloshed over the rim of her mug. Dad didn't deny it. He just sat there, calm as anything, and said, well, this is unfortunate. And then what happened? Mom left the room. Didn't say a word, just got up and walked out. And Dad looked at me with these cold eyes I'd never seen before and said, you're going to destroy this family, Elizabeth. Everything I've built. Everything we have. Your brother's futures. Your own future. All of it, gone. Lizzie's voice dropped to barely a whisper. I told him I didn't have a choice. That people had lost their life savings because of him, that what he was doing was evil. And he said, then you leave me no choice either. At first, I didn't understand what he meant. I thought maybe he'd try to bribe me, or threaten to cut me off financially. But then, things started happening. Small things at first. She started ticking them off on her fingers. My brakes failed while I was driving on the highway. The mechanic said the brake line had been cut, but clean enough that it looked like normal wear. Someone broke into my apartment, but nothing was stolen, they just wanted me to know they'd been there. I started getting followed. Black cars, same ones, always keeping their distance but always there. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, feeling sick. Because I thought I was being paranoid. Until I found the life insurance policy. What life insurance policy? Mom and Dad had taken out a $10 million life insurance policy on me 6 months before I confronted them. Listed themselves as beneficiaries. When I saw that document, I realized they'd been planning this. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. They'd been setting it up, getting their ducks in a row. I stood up so fast my chair fell over. That's insane. You're telling me our parents, planned to murder you? I know how it sounds. But Moira, think about it. $10 million plus what they could seize from my trust fund would be enough to cover their losses, at least for a while. Buy them time to either fix the Ponzi scheme or flee the country. And with me dead, the evidence dies too. No one else knew. I was the only threat. If you're watching this and your heart is racing like mine was, if you're thinking about the people in your life and wondering who you can really trust, do me a favor, subscribe to this channel. Hit that notification bell. Because stories like this need to be heard. Sometimes the worst monsters are the ones who tuck you in at night and tell you they love you. And if you're in a situation where you feel unsafe, where your gut is telling you something is wrong, trust it. Trust it the way Lizzie trusted hers. It might just save your life. So I made a decision, Lizzie continued after I'd picked up my chair and sat back down. I would disappear. Make them think they'd won. Make everyone think I was dead. How? I asked. The police identified your body through dental records. She gave me a sad smile. Do you remember Lance Burton? The magician? The one you dated in college? Yeah. After we broke up, we stayed friends. He went into forensic anthropology of all things. We'd kept in touch over the years. When I told him what was happening, he helped me. He had access to dental records through his work. We found a Jane Doe from California who'd been killed in a car accident, similar age and build to me. Someone who'd never been identified, whose family had never claimed her. Lance falsified the dental records to match mine. Jesus, Lizzie. I know. It was horrible. But Moira, I was terrified. I didn't know who else Dad had in his pocket. Police, judges, he had connections everywhere. If I'd gone to the authorities directly, I was dead. I needed to disappear completely, let him think he'd won, and then come back with enough evidence to bury him. So the car accident was staged. I found someone who specialized in this kind of thing, don't ask me how. They rigged my car to go off that cliff, set it on fire with accelerant, made sure the body inside would be too damaged to identify beyond dental records. I watched from a mile away with binoculars. Watched my own death. Tears were streaming down her face now. Do you know what that's like? Watching your life end? Knowing that everyone you love is about to be destroyed by grief, and you're the one doing it to them? I reached across the table and took her hand. You had no choice. I had a choice. I could have died for real. Some days, I think that would have been easier. Where have you been? I asked. Where did you go? Everywhere. Nowhere. I became someone else, Lindsay Cole, if you can believe it, using 2 of those names Dad's partners used. Got a fake ID, fake social security number. Spent time in Oregon, then Montana, then Wyoming. Little towns where no one asks too many questions. Worked cash jobs, waitressing, farm work, anything that wouldn't require too much paperwork. And all this time, you were gathering evidence? She nodded. That was the whole point. I couldn't just hide forever. I had to end this, or I'd be running for the rest of my life. So I spent this year hacking into Paulson Investments servers remotely, documenting everything. Every fraudulent transaction, every false report, every lie told to every client. I compiled it all into a file so comprehensive, so damning, that even Dad's connections couldn't make it disappear. And now? Now I've sent that file to the FBI, the SEC, and several investigative journalists. By tomorrow morning, it'll be everywhere. The feds will raid Paulson Investments. Dad, Mom, and all his partners are going to prison. It's over. She looked at me with hollow eyes. But I needed to warn you first. Because when this breaks, Moira, it's going to be bad. Not just for them, for all of us. The family name will be destroyed. Michael and Jeffrey will lose their positions at the company. Any assets we have will be seized. You'll be questioned, investigated. Your life is about to turn into a nightmare, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I should have been angry. Part of me was. How dare she put me through a year of grief? How dare she let me suffer like that when she was alive the whole time? But looking at her, really looking at her, I saw something I'd never seen in my little sister before. Not just pain, but a core of steel. She'd done something impossibly hard. She'd sacrificed everything, including her own identity, to stop our parents from destroying more lives. I don't blame you, I said finally. I'm angry, and hurt, and confused. But I don't blame you. You should. Maybe. But you did what you had to do. And you know what? I believe you. About all of it. Because. I took a deep breath. Because I noticed things too. Things I told myself didn't mean anything. Lizzie leaned forward. What things? Mom and Dad's reaction to your death. It was wrong. Not wrong like everyone grieves differently wrong. Wrong like performative. Mom cried at the funeral, but I never saw her cry before or after. At home, she was just normal. Maybe a little stressed, but normal. And Dad? He threw himself into work like nothing had happened. Told me we honor the dead by living well. What kind of father says that a week after his daughter dies? A father who's relieved, Lizzie said quietly. Yeah. And then there's the money. 3 months ago, they bought a vacation home in Belize. Who does that while supposedly mourning their daughter? At the time, I thought maybe it was their way of coping, but now. I laughed bitterly. Now I realize they were probably setting up an escape plan. Somewhere without extradition. Lizzie nodded. That's exactly what it was. I found the deed while I was digging through their financials. They've been slowly moving assets offshore, preparing to run. What about Michael and Jeffrey? Do they know? Her face darkened. That's the worst part. I don't think they knew about the plot to kill me, but they knew about the fraud. They had to, they're both executives at Paulson. They've been complicit this whole time. Our brothers. Michael, who taught me how to ride a bike. Jeffrey, who'd scared off my first boyfriend when I was 16. Both of them, corrupt. Both of them, criminals. Our whole family, I said. It's all rotten. No, Lizzie said firmly. Not all of it. You're not rotten, Moira. You're the best person I know. You're why I came back. Why I'm not just staying hidden forever. Because you deserve to know the truth. You deserve to make your own choices about what comes next. Show me, I said. Show me the evidence. Lizzie pulled a laptop from her backpack, one I hadn't even noticed she was carrying. She opened it up and started clicking through files. What I saw over the next 2 hours made me physically ill. Spreadsheets showing millions of dollars siphoned from client accounts. Emails between Walter and his partners discussing how to manage the exposure of their fraud. Text messages where Janet discussed the life insurance policy with an agent, specifically noting that it needed to be for a substantial amount but not so large as to trigger investigation. Communications with Michael and Jeffrey where they discussed the Elizabeth problem and whether natural solutions might present themselves. Natural solutions. That's what our brothers had called the plan to murder their own sister. There were bank statements showing transfers to offshore accounts. Property deeds for houses in countries without extradition treaties. Even a burner phone record showing calls between Walter and someone Lizzie had identified as Wyatt Epson on the night her brakes had been cut. "This is enough," I said, feeling numb. "This is more than enough." "I know. The FBI's had it for 3 hours now. Apparently there's already a warrant being prepared for tomorrow morning. They're going to hit the house, the office, everything simultaneously. Dad, Mom, Michael, Jeffrey, and all the partners, they're all going down." "Good," I said, and I meant it. "They deserve it." Lizzie closed the laptop. "Moira, I need you to answer something honestly. And please, don't spare my feelings." "What? Do you wish I had just died? That I'd actually gone over that cliff? Because at least then you'd still have parents, brothers. You'd still have a family. Instead, I've destroyed all of that. Taken it all away from you." I looked at this woman who'd once been my little sister, who'd grown into someone brave enough to fake her own death and spend a year in hiding to bring down the people who'd raised us. Who'd sacrificed everything, her identity, her comfort, her very existence, to stop them from hurting more innocent people. "No," I said. "I don't wish that. Because you're not the one who destroyed our family, Lizzie. They did. When they decided that money was more important than people. When they decided your life was worth less than their freedom. They destroyed this family the day they took out that insurance policy. Maybe even before that. You didn't break anything that wasn't already shattered." She started crying again, but this time, I think they were tears of relief. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now? Now I have to turn myself in. File a death certificate correction, deal with all the legal chaos of being alive when you're supposed to be dead. Testify against them. And then, maybe, try to figure out who I am when I'm not running. And what about me? You move on. You distance yourself from all of this. Change your name if you want to. You didn't do anything wrong, Moira. You don't have to carry their shame. But that was the thing, I did have to carry it. Because they were my parents. My brothers. And no matter how much I wanted to pretend otherwise, their sins were now part of my story too. If you're still watching, thank you. I know this is heavy. I know it's hard to hear. But here's what I want you to take away from this. Sometimes the people we trust most are the ones who hurt us most deeply. And sometimes, love means having the courage to expose that hurt, even when it costs you everything. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever had to make an impossible choice between loyalty and truth, subscribe. Share this video. Because somewhere out there, someone needs to hear that they're not alone. That doing the right thing, even when it destroys your life, is still the right thing. And that survival, true survival, sometimes looks like starting over from nothing. Lizzie slept on my couch that night. Or tried to. Mostly, we both just lay awake in our separate spaces, thinking about what morning would bring. I kept getting up to check on her, to make sure she was really there, that I hadn't dreamed or hallucinated the whole impossible thing. At 6 a.m., we were sitting at my kitchen table again, drinking coffee and not saying much, when my phone rang. It was Tate Walker, one of my coworkers at the hospital. "Moira, turn on the news," she said without preamble. "Channel 8. Now." I fumbled for the remote and turned on my TV. The morning news was on, and there, filling the screen, was a photo of my father. The banner below read, "Major fraud case, Nevada investment firm CEO arrested." Federal agents raided Paulson Investments early this morning, the news anchor said, arresting CEO Walter Lantz and several of his associates on charges of fraud, embezzlement, and operating a Ponzi scheme that may have defrauded investors of up to $50 million. The SEC has frozen all company assets pending investigation. They showed footage of my father being led out of his house in handcuffs. He looked smaller than I remembered, older. My mother was behind him, also in cuffs, her face blank. Michael and Jeffrey were shown being arrested at their respective homes. In a bizarre twist, the anchor continued, authorities say they were tipped off by Elizabeth Lance, Walter Lance's daughter, who was believed to have died in a car accident last year. Miss Lance apparently faked her death and spent the past year gathering evidence against her family. She is currently cooperating with investigators. Lizzie's photo appeared on screen, her old photo, from before. She looked so young, so hopeful. Nothing like the hardened survivor sitting next to me. They're already calling it one of the biggest fraud cases in Nevada history, the anchor said. More on this story as it develops. I turned off the TV. We sat in silence. Well, Lizzie finally said. I guess we're famous. The next few days were a blur. Lizzie turned herself into the FBI, who were surprisingly gentle with her once they understood the full situation. The assistant director in charge of the case even told her she'd done an incredible service by documenting everything so thoroughly. I took leave from the hospital. I couldn't face patients while my family's crimes were plastered all over every news channel. Reporters camped outside my apartment. My phone rang constantly, journalists, old friends, people I hadn't talked to in years, all wanting the inside story. I didn't answer any of them. What I did do was visit my father in jail. They gave us 20 minutes in a sterile room separated by glass. He looked terrible, unwashed, his expensive suit replaced with an orange jumpsuit, his usual commanding presence reduced to the posture of a man who knew he was finished. He picked up the phone on his side. I picked up mine. Moira, he said, and his voice was hoarse. Sweetheart, you have to understand. Don't, I cut him off. Don't call me sweetheart. Don't try to explain. Just, don't. Your sister has ruined this family. No, Dad. You ruined this family. You stole from people. You tried to murder your own daughter. You made me mourn someone who was alive. What kind of monster does that? His face hardened. I did what I had to do to protect everything I'd built. You built it on lies. All of it. The house, the cars, the reputation, all lies. And you know what the worst part is? I would have loved you anyway. If you'd been a failure, if you'd lost everything, I still would have loved you because you were my father. But you couldn't even give us that. You couldn't be honest with your own children. I gave you everything, he said, and he actually sounded offended. You gave us nothing that mattered, I replied. And now we have nothing at all. I hung up the phone and walked out. I never went back. The trials took months to prepare. In that time, Lizzie and I learned to be sisters again, but different sisters. Not the innocent girls who'd grown up in the Lance mansion, but two women who'd survived something terrible and were trying to figure out what came next. She testified against them, all of them. Dad, Mom, Michael, Jeffrey, and all the partners. Her testimony was devastating, precise, backed up by mountains of evidence. The jury deliberated for less than 6 hours. Walter Lance, guilty on all counts. Sentenced to 40 years in federal prison. Janet Lance, guilty on conspiracy charges. Sentenced to 20 years. Michael and Jeffrey Lance, both guilty of fraud and conspiracy. 15 years each. Douglas Milton, Wyatt Epson, Cole Tate, and Bill Miller, all convicted. Various sentences ranging from 10 to 25 years. When the verdicts came in, I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no relief, just a hollow emptiness where my family used to be. But Lizzie squeezed my hand, and I realized I was wrong. My family wasn't gone. Part of it was still here, still fighting, still surviving. The worst part was meeting the victims. There were so many of them. Retirees who'd lost their entire life savings. Young families who'd invested their children's college funds. People who'd trusted Walter Lance because he seemed so successful, so trustworthy. There was Milton Anderson, a 78-year-old veteran who'd lost $800,000, everything he'd saved over 50 years. He had to move in with his son and cancel the medical treatments his wife needed. There was Epson Chin and his wife, who'd invested their whole nest egg, $1.2 million, believing they were securing their retirement. Instead, they both had to go back to work in their 60s. There was Tate Rodriguez, a single mother who'd invested her late husband's life insurance money, $300,000, thinking she was building a future for her 3 kids. She lost it all. The list went on and on. $50 million. Hundreds of victims. Thousands of ruined dreams. Some of them hated us, Lizzie and me, just for bearing the land's name. They screamed at us outside the courthouse, called us thieves and criminals. And you know what? I understood. Because even though we hadn't known, even though we hadn't benefited directly from the fraud, we'd lived in the house it paid for. We'd driven the cars, worn the clothes, enjoyed the lifestyle that came from stolen money. We were complicit by proximity, guilty by association. But some victims thanked us. Thanked Lizzie specifically for exposing it before it could get worse, before more people could be hurt. Those conversations were somehow harder than the angry ones. You saved my neighbor, one woman told Lizzie. She was about to invest her inheritance with your father. If you hadn't come forward when you did, she would have lost everything too. Small mercies in an ocean of pain. Every asset my parents had was seized. The house, the cars, the vacation properties, the offshore accounts, all of it liquidated to pay back victims. It wasn't nearly enough. $50 million stolen, maybe $20 million recovered. The rest was gone, spent on maintaining the illusion of success. Lizzie and I were investigated too, thoroughly. The FBI went through our bank accounts, our tax returns, our entire financial histories. They found nothing, because there was nothing to find. We'd both been financially independent since college, me with my nursing career, Lizzie with her legitimate consulting work before everything went to hell. In the end, we were cleared. But our bank accounts were still frozen for 6 months during the investigation, leaving us both scrambling for money. I picked up extra shifts at the hospital. Lizzie worked construction under her fake identity until the legal system could sort out how to resurrect a dead person's real identity. It was humiliating. It was exhausting. It was exactly what we deserved for being Walter Lance's daughters, even though we'd done nothing wrong. The hardest part was dealing with Michael and Jeffrey. They both tried to contact me from prison. Letters, mostly, then phone calls when I didn't respond to the letters. Michael's letters were full of justifications. He claimed he hadn't known how bad it was, that he'd just done what Dad told him to do, that he was a victim too. He asked me to visit him, to bring him books and commissary money, to remember that he was still my brother. I burned his letters. Jeffrey's approach was different, he went straight for manipulation. His letters talked about how Mom and Dad had always had unrealistic expectations, how the pressure had been too much, how he'd gotten in over his head. He reminded me of our childhood, of the times he protected me, of the brother he used to be. He asked me to remember the good times, to forgive him, to give him another chance. I burned his letters too. Because the truth was, they'd known. Maybe not about the plan to kill Lizzie. I still wanted to believe they hadn't been party to actual murder, but they'd known about the fraud. They'd participated in it. And when Lizzie confronted Dad, when she became a problem, neither of them had warned her. Neither of them had helped her. They'd chosen the money over their sister. And in doing so, they'd chosen to be strangers to me. Lizzie tried to defend them, in her way. They were raised by the same people we were, she said once. Maybe they just didn't have the strength to break free. Maybe, I said. Or maybe they just didn't want to. People expected us to be angry. To be vindictive. To give interviews about how we destroyed our family and were glad about it. But that wasn't what this was about. It never had been. This wasn't revenge. This was something quieter, something harder to name. It was about setting boundaries. About saying, you can't do this to people and expect us to be complicit through our silence. It was about choosing truth over comfort, justice over family loyalty. In a weird way, it was the most loving thing Lizzie could have done. Because she'd saved them from themselves, in a sense. They would have kept going, kept stealing, kept destroying lives until the whole thing collapsed anyway. And when it did, it would have been even worse. More victims. More pain. Maybe even more violence. By stopping them when she did, Lizzie had limited the damage. It didn't feel like it, not with hundreds of victims and $50 million lost, but it could have been worse. That was cold comfort, but it was something. Not everyone abandoned us. My coworker, Tate Walker, the one who'd called me that morning, she stuck by me. So did a few other nurses from the hospital. They knew me, knew my work, knew I wasn't my father. You can't choose your family, Tate told me over coffee one afternoon. But you can choose what you do about it. And you chose right. Lizzie found support too, surprisingly. Lance Burton, her ex-boyfriend who'd helped her fake her death, he never asked for anything in return. Never tried to capitalize on his role in the story, never sold his story to the tabloids even though they offered him hundreds of thousands of dollars. She asked for help, he told me when I finally met him. What kind of person would I be if I'd said no? There was Alexander Lindsay, Dad's former assistant, who testified against him even though it cost him his career. He'd known about some of the fraud but hadn't realized the scope until Lizzie showed him. His testimony helped put Dad away. I should have looked harder, he told me at one of the hearings. Should have asked more questions. I'm sorry I didn't. And there was Cole Wyatt, no relation to Wyatt Epson, a journalist who'd broken the story. He could have sensationalized it, could have painted us as villains or idiots who should have known. Instead, he treated it as the tragedy it was, a family destroyed by greed, two daughters trying to do the right thing. People aren't their worst actions, he said in his article. And sometimes, the greatest courage is standing up to the people you love most. These small acts of kindness, from people who owed us nothing, meant everything. It's been exactly 1 year since Lizzie knocked on my door at 2 a.m. 2 years since she died. In that time, we've both changed in ways I couldn't have imagined. Lizzie works for the FBI now, consulting on fraud cases. Turns out, spending a year documenting a $50 million Ponzi scheme gives you some valuable expertise. She's helping them catch other Walter Lances, stopping them before they can destroy as many lives. She's still Lizzie, but different. Harder in some ways, but also more at peace. She doesn't look over her shoulder anymore. Doesn't flinch at unexpected sounds. She's reclaimed her identity, her life, her name. You know what's weird? She told me recently. I'm happier now than I was before. Even with everything we lost, everything we went through. I'm happier because I'm free. Free from them, free from the lies, free from pretending everything was okay when it wasn't. I understood what she meant. Because I felt it too. I'm still a nurse. Still pulling double shifts. Still living in Las Vegas, though I moved to a different apartment to get away from the reporters. I kept the name Lance, not because I'm proud of it, but because running from it felt like letting them win. I'm Moira Lance, and I'm building a life that has nothing to do with stolen money or family betrayal. Some days are hard. Some days, I see someone who looks like my father and feel that old instinct to wave, to smile, before I remember. Before I remember what he is. But most days are okay. Most days, I'm just a woman trying to live a good life, trying to help people, trying to be better than the family I came from. So here's what I want you to know, if you've made it this far, family isn't about blood. It's not about the people who raised you or the name you were born with. It's about the people who show up for you when your world falls apart. It's about choosing truth over comfort, justice over loyalty, love over fear. Lizzie saved herself when she faked her death. But she saved me too, in a way. She showed me that it's possible to walk away from toxicity, even when it's wearing your mother's face and your father's name. She showed me that doing the right thing doesn't always feel good, but that doesn't make it less right. If you're struggling with family dysfunction, if you're dealing with people who prioritize their comfort over your safety, if you're questioning whether you should speak up or stay silent, this is your sign. Speak up. Walk away. Save yourself, because no one else is going to do it for you. And if this story helped you, if it made you think or feel or realize something about your own life, do me one last favor, subscribe to this channel. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment telling me what family means to you now. Because we're all trying to figure this out together, trying to build lives worth living out of whatever broken pieces we've been given. That's the real quiet justice, not the courtrooms or the verdicts or the prison sentences. It's the life you build after the betrayal. It's the person you become when you choose yourself over the people who hurt you. Last week, I got a letter. It was from Walter Lance, my father, currently serving year 2 of his 40-year sentence at a federal prison in Arizona. I almost threw it away unopened. But something made me read it. It wasn't an apology. He's incapable of that, I think. But it was something. An acknowledgement, maybe. He wrote, "I understand now that I destroyed the only things that mattered. I thought I was building a legacy. Instead, I built a prison. Not the one I'm in now, I built that a long time ago, brick by brick, lie by lie. I'm sorry you and Elizabeth had to be the ones to tear it down. I'm sorry you had to be stronger than I was. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But it was something." I showed the letter to Lizzie. She read it, handed it back to me, and said, "That's the closest he'll ever come to taking responsibility. Is it enough for you?" She thought about it. "No. But I don't need it to be. I don't need his approval or his apology or his understanding. I just need him to stop hurting people. And he can't do that anymore. So yeah, it's enough." We were sitting in my apartment, the new one, the one without memories of that 2 a.m. knock. We just finished dinner, some pasta dish Lizzie had learned to make during her year in hiding. It was simple, nothing fancy, but it tasted like home. Not the home we'd grown up in, but the home we were building now, one meal at a time. "Do you ever regret it?" I asked. "Coming back? Exposing them? You could have just stayed gone, started a new life as someone else." "Every day," she admitted. "But then I think about all those people who would have lost everything if I'd stayed silent. I think about the woman I saved, the one who almost invested with Dad. And I think about you, living your life thinking I was dead. No, I don't regret it. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but I don't regret it." She smiled, and for the first time in 2 years, it reached her eyes. "Besides, I kind of like being alive. It's better than the alternative." We laughed, and it felt good. It felt like healing. This is my story. This is Lizzie's story. This is the story of what happens when you choose truth over silence, when you choose justice over family, when you choose yourself over the people who should have protected you but didn't. It's not a happy ending. Those don't really exist, I've learned. But it's a real ending. An honest one. And maybe that's better. My name is Moira Lance. I'm 28 years old. I live in Las Vegas, Nevada. And I'm the daughter of criminals, the sister of a woman who came back from the dead, and the aunt to nieces and nephews I'll probably never meet because their fathers are in prison for the next 15 years. But I'm also a nurse who saves lives. A friend who shows up. A sister who chose her sister over everything else. And that's who I choose to be. Not in spite of my family's betrayal. But because of it. Because sometimes, the greatest gift your family can give you is showing you exactly who you don't want to be. And then giving you the strength to become something better. Thank you for staying until the end. If this story touched you in any way, hit that subscribe button. Share it with someone who needs to hear that they're not alone in their struggle with family dysfunction. And remember, you are not defined by where you came from. You're defined by where you're going.